Love it.
Hey, everybody. Those of you joining us on Facebook Live, I'm here today with Sarah Swafford. And so for those of you listen on the podcast, we've got an awesome interview lined up for you. And so, Sarah, welcome to the program. It's good to have you on.
Hey, Jason. It's great to be with you. It's so fun. I miss our Steubenvilles this summer, and
Yeah.
I really miss the being there with the students, but I miss the team as well. And so anytime to get to hang out with my fellow workers in the vineyard that I love so much, it's great to be with you.
Yeah, no, it's been a different summer for sure. What has the Swaff family been up to during this time of COVID
Yeah.
and lockdown?
Well, I know it was weird to roll from quarantine into summer, you know,
Yeah.
and that was weird. It kind of felt like summer happened in a weird way, but not.
Yeah.
But yeah, about a year ago, we bought a 1883 Victorian house that is across the street from our church. So Jesus and Perpetual Adoration and Benedictine College are both a block away from this house.
Oh,
And my
nice.
husband was like, Swaff was like, I don't even need to go in the house. We're buying this house. And I was like, we should go into the house first. And so we bought it, and she's beautiful, but she has been a lot of work. And so we were right in the middle of kind of renovating when COVID happened. And so it's just been kind of a wild summer in the sense that we're trying to, I'm a general contractor this summer. So I've been trying to herd cats in the form of plumbers and electricians. And my kids don't want to do any more manual work ever in their life. They're tired of working for $5 an hour. But so yeah, it's been great. I've just missed ministry a lot, though. I'm not going to lie. Like I think it's sometimes good to have things taken away for you to go, oh my gosh, like I didn't realize how much, I mean, I realized how much I loved it and how much it fed me, but this summer has just been like, I like ache for it. I like ache for the students that aren't there. I ache to be there. I ache just even watching the Steubenville live, watching the adoration. I just like wept. I was just like crying because I was just like, man, I just did not realize how much I missed it. I'm gonna cry now. Like I just love it. So anyway, I love summer. It's been great. We're ready to move into this house. We're probably a month or two away, but I've been the busiest I've ever been, and at the same time, I'm not doing any of the things I normally do. So it's just a really, I'm sure we'll talk about it in this thing, but I feel like a lot of people, I'm having kind of a identity crisis / what the heck are you doing, Lord / all of it. I feel like I'm in the same place as a lot of high schoolers going to college right now. It's like, what is going on with my life?
Yeah, no, it's good to hear you guys have been keeping busy, even if it's a little child slave labor. Nothing wrong with that. So, no, I remember
totally.
for the sake of our viewers, I remember when I first got in touch with you, your message, your ministry. I remember I was sitting at home back when we lived in Denver, Colorado, flipping through the stations and saw you on EWTN back on Life on the Rock. And I had never heard of the concept of emotional virtue before. And you just started talking. I'm like, man, this makes so much sense. Like, this is something that only a woman could really come up with, because although that we're all involved in it, I don't know, it takes that feminine genius to be like, hey, look, there's some stuff we got to work on here. It's not just physical, purity of intentions, just the emotional. And you just got into some stuff that I was like, sitting there thinking like, I've totally done that in a relationship, like not intentionally, but just the ghosting and the miscommunication. And it made me think, I remember back in college, my buddy, one of my best friends, was dating this girl in the girls' dorm, and her roommate and I kind of liked each other. And so my buddy is like, hey, well, why don't we just like serenade them, on a Friday night, and we can put on Afro rainbow wigs, and we can, wear bathrobes and sing "You Lost That Loving Feeling." I'm like, oh, that's a great idea. And so, so we serenade them, probably like midnight on a Friday night in front of the whole girls' dorm of like hundreds of girls with some boom box. And, and then I think we ended up going to a dance together and stuff. And then I kind of lost interest and just moved on. And this poor girl is probably like, what the heck? Like, 1 minute, like, you're serenading me, and then we go to some dance, and then, like, I don't even see you after that, barely, and you just move on.
Yeah.
And back then, it's just like, oh, well, I'm just not as interested now. I'm going to move on. I don't need to have some conversation with her and actually give her clarity. You just move on. Life goes.
Totally.
And then, when I heard you just going into this stuff and the lack of clarity and intentionality and boundaries and the proper progression of relationships, it was like, man, everybody needs this. This is not just like a female issue. And so I reached out to you right after the show, and I think I found you on your website, was just getting started. And I'm like, girl, you got to turn this into a book. You got to write this down. And so for those of you who haven't seen, it ended up becoming this, which is the book Emotional Virtue, A Guide to Have Drama-Free Relationships. And so thank you for creating that thing, because guys as well as girls just need clarity and a blueprint when it comes to all the confusion of these relationships.
Right, right. Well, it's so funny that you say that, because it's one of my favorite stories ever to tell. Is a lot of people will be like, so did you always, did you always want to write a book? And I'm like, okay, when you're growing up and like you want to be like a ballerina and a zookeeper and things like that, like if you would have told me like you're going to speak and write a book, I would have been like, you're funny. Because in my high school speech class, I literally threw up every time before I had to give a public speech. And an author was like, that was something like I would have never wrote a book. And so I really want your viewers to hear this. And that is to say that my ministry and that book that you're holding would never have happened if you wouldn't have said to me, Sarah, you can do this. Like, I remember I told you, like, I have 3 kids. Like, I don't even know how to spell. Like, I don't think I can do this. And you were just like, Sarah, just keep writing down what you're talking about. And if you wouldn't have like had faith in me and like kind of pushed me, I don't think I ever would have even thought of it. Do you know what I mean? I would have never even thought to sit down and write it. And so you and Kristalina and your love and support, like just of me as a person, and especially of just in general, my love of others, which is what ministry is, it just meant the world to me. And that book really came at a time, and you can attest to this too, Jason, because, you and I are both, we've been doing this for a while, but it's so wild how much things have changed since I wrote the book. I mean, the book is 5 years old. I've been doing ministry for 10 years. And I think about where I was when I was kind of coming. So emotional virtue, a lot of people are like, oh, okay, like on a plane. They're like, what do you do for a living? I'm like, oh, you don't have 8 hours. Like, it's going to take me 8 hours to tell you what I do for a living.
Well, define the term for the sake of our listeners who haven't heard the term before or haven't read the book. Like, what is emotional virtue? What is the emoticoaster? These terms that are core to what you're saying. Just give, what does that stuff mean?
Right. And I'm so glad that you had me on for 8 hours for me to do that exactly, which is define emotional virtue. It really is a term that, St. Thomas Aquinas, he probably is listening into a lot of my talks, but, he would just be like, duh, like, applying a virtue to your emotions, duh, it's kind of like just a play on words. Because what was happening is when I went to Benedictine College, and my senior seminar as a theology major, I basically just took so many Dr. Street classes. I ended up majoring in theology because I loved him and he was my mentor. And our senior seminar was on we read this book, and it changed my life. And a lot of your viewers are probably familiar with it, but it's called Love and Responsibility by one Carol Wojtyla. And we read that book, and it just sent my whole life kind of into, reading it with Dr. Street. His book, Men, Women, and the Mystery of Love, was born from my class and all of our conversations. And honestly, I was dating Swaff during that time. We were like newly about to be engaged when we took that class together, which is like, thank you, Jesus. Like, that's good marriage prep, right? So like whenever we were going through this, like the conversations we were having in that class, there was just a lot. I look back and I go, man, I've hashed this out in my own life. I've hashed it out in the dorms with the college girls where my ministry was born as a residence hall director. Like 3-4 years later, out comes texting, out comes social media, thank you, Lord. Like, I got married before any of it hit the fan. Like I didn't text Swap. Like, a lot of people are like, how did you handle texting with Swap? I'm like, T9, like it didn't exist. Like, Jason, you'll laugh. They don't even know what it is. A lot of your viewers don't even know. Like, texting was the slowest thing ever. But you talk about like ghosting or like dating someone in your mind or, all this stuff. As I was watching the girls and guys navigate that in college as an RD, I was watching it married. I was like, dang, this is like going to change the way people interact forever. This is going to change, and what I was seeing is a lot of these college students understood chastity. They're like, duh, like I get chastity. Like, most of them were like, Jason Evert saved my life, changed my life. Kristalina, 8th grade. I got the card. Here's my card. Like they were just like, I got this and I love it and I believe in it. But then, enter college, enter young adult, enter, whatever. And you have those insecurities. You have those wounds. You have the feeling of, I am never going to be loved and I am never going to be enough. And all of a sudden, all the mind, like the whole battlefield of the mind, right? It's all up in your head. And it's for men and women. I was very adamant about this book being for both, because when people hear me say like, oh, emotional virtue, like, oh, you give talks on relationships, like, so you're a female speaker? I'm like, well, I'm a female speaker, but I don't just speak to females, right? Like, I want the men in on this, because I joke that the women can't date themselves, right? So like, we have, like, the men have to be not only in on this, but the leaders of this. And what was so beautiful is when I came out with emotional virtue, I was with a lot of the college girls. And I gave a talk on campus at Benedictine one night. We had like 300 women show up. The very next day, I had this pounding at my door. Open the door. There's like 12 guys in the hallway. And I was like, they're going to kill me. Like, I always say if I'm going down.
Yeah, pitchforks and like torches and everything and shovels.
It's my joke. Like, if I go down as a martyr, I'm going down by an ex-boyfriend. And you are too, Jason. So we're just prepared for it, right? Like, so I was like, oh my gosh, they're going to kill me. And these guys looked at me and they said, you gave a talk last night to the women on like dating and relationships, and you didn't invite us. Like, when's our talk? Like, when are you going to give our talk? And I was like, next week, I was like, yeah. So I basically gave a talk to the men. It was basically everything I was hearing from the women. It was everything that that you and I, that some people talk about, that they just don't communicate to each other. And so the introduction of phones and the introduction of social media created almost like this third world, right? Like, it created this other place. If relationships were complicated enough, in walks all of this. And so like what we called it back when we were in Dr. Shree's class was emotional chastity. So we would say that term, but what I found was every time people would say emotional chastity, people would come after me with pitchforks, because they were like, emotional chastity. Most people, if they don't follow chastity.com, they think chastity just equals abstinence. So they think like chastity. So they thought I was saying emotional abstinence, like don't have emotions, don't have feelings, don't have, and people would come after me like with hatred. And like, I understood. I was like, whoa, read the book, listen to the talk, like, I'm not saying no emotions. I'm saying having authority and control and having virtue applied to your emotions. So I started understanding what that term kind of, how that felt and sounded to people. And it was hard on them. They were like, they didn't understand what I was saying. And so I went with emotional virtue because I was just trying to get at the point. And this is the definition. That was kind of the backstory of how it became a thing. But it really is. And this is when I'm on the plane, when I get you for like a minute and a half, right? The definition that I've come up, and then again, the whole 158 pages of like how it actually and you could go on for 8 hours on how it actually all comes to play, but it's to rise above your spontaneous emotional or physical or sexual desire in the moment, to be able to rise above that and to choose the good, the true, and the beautiful for yourself and your beloved. And what happens is a lot of times when people are in the heat of a moment, like physically, to be able to say like, whoa, like, okay, this is my boundary. This is my place. Like, I can't do this with you. Like, we need to take a walk. Like, there's kind of that ability to do that in chastity that is, you see it, you're in a situation, you're like, we're out, like, we can't, this is where I'm at. Emotionally, with phones, like with these games that, I mean, a lot of girls and guys will say, like, I've been texting this girl, if a guy's like, I've been texting this girl for 6 months. And like every time we're in person, she acts like I don't exist. But then the minute I get back to my dorm room, like she's all, hey babe, how was your day? And this whole idea of just, like a lot of people don't know how to communicate like one-on-one anymore. And so the emotional ties, a lot of girls will say, I thought we were dating. And I found out that like he does the whole, hey babe, how was your day to like 6 other girls. And I had no idea. And so, like, and I, it's hard because again, we're just treading in the shallow water here of what it all is, but emotional virtue at the heart of it was what I was seeing in these college students is what I saw in myself without a phone, which is, dang, I am so insecure. And I am so like looking for, am I enough? Am I pretty enough? Am I smart enough? Am I athletic enough? Or would you date me? Like, do I make the team? Like, this group of girls, like, am I enough for you? Like, am I gonna make it? Like, who is gonna love me? And what do I need to do that? And that is not just a physical chastity thing. That can be, and even like all your viewers, people out there watching, you can be the most like striving Catholic, let's go team, daily mass, here's my rosary. Like you could be like on the God squad and still struggle with this because it's just that whole idea. The devil loves to just mess with us. And so I took that idea of the way he likes to tie us in knots and lie to us and lie about our worth and like really expose that in relationships. That's humanity. That's just being human. So I really wanted to hit that piece of it because I didn't think a lot of people were talking about that like inner core of like how we use each other emotionally, how we hurt each other emotionally. Amen.
Yeah, and one thing that came to the light when I read your book is that, you know, a woman is such an integrated being that her body wants her to go where her heart goes. And if she has no custody over her heart and her imagination, forget about having control over the body. And so if we're missing that emotional internal piece of virtue, self-restraint, custody of the imagination, chastity becomes so much harder. And so emotional virtue, I like that you went in that direction because it's not just as it pertains to our sexuality. This is something that pertains to building authentic sisterhood with other girls, building authentic brotherhood. And that's why it's so great guy-girl, because you know, I think as a whole chastity movement, there's been a lot of evolution out of the outdated purity culture of just sin management to and these stereotypes of just like, okay, well, porn is a guy problem, emotions are the girl's problem, so let's put them in different cabins and deal with it. And then, hey, guess what? Guys have emotions, girls have porn. Like we got to work through this together. And so I think there's been such a healthy evolution of that that's a breath of fresh air. And even though it's behind the times in the sense of, okay, we should have caught on to this 10 years ago, but I think your book is very much on the frontier of that. So to give the viewers, you know, and listeners more of a grasp of the key concepts, elevator pitch, what is the emoticoaster? And what does that look like in a person's life?
Oh, fun. So I came up with that. Honestly, it was one of the first couple times I ever gave a talk. I was trying to paint the picture of what I was hearing on the other side of the ice, like, you know, when I would get ice cream with girls or chicken wings with the guys, you know, like that whole, I love to sit around and listen to people talk like that. Like I love to listen to young adults talk because what I'm struggling with, what I struggled with, what you struggled with, again, it's changing all the time. And so when social media hit, the emoticoaster was like, it was just kind of funny. It was like, oh my gosh, you know, mental stalking, social media stalking. You know, I mean, there's this whole idea of, gosh, I am going like, in my talks, I still use it because it's so effective in the way that I'm able, like everybody, all the high school, I'll be in a crowd of like 1,000 high school kids and they're just rolling because I'm like, you know, like you mentally stalk, you emotionally, like, and the minute I put social media stalk, like everybody that's like, oh, like, and then they start pointing at each other and they're like, oh, yeah. And I'm always just like, okay, don't out your best friend. Like, that's a really bad idea, you know? So, but I just think that, I mean, when I wrote the book, that was probably one of the hardest things for me to do was I didn't want to date the book because, you know, mental stalking, social media stalking, texting, calling, and physically stalking are the ones that I put on here. But I was like, shoot, the minute this goes to press, like you and I talked about it a lot, you know, I was like, the minute this goes to press, something else is going to be out, you know? So I had to add, I've actually in my talks, I've added FaceTiming because texting and, you know, a lot of people will lay in bed and FaceTime or just like talk and, you know, that whole reality. And then physically stalking, they all start laughing because it's like, I don't mean like following them around like a puppy dog. I mean, and this is what I saw a lot, even when I was in high school, was somebody would get a boyfriend or have a girlfriend and they would drop all their friends and they would worship this person. You know, I had a good friend who, the minute she started dating this guy, it was like she didn't have time for me. They didn't have time for me. They were totally wrapped up in their relationship until it all went south, you know, and then they're back. And when I speak on that in my talks, like I really wish that's one of the, I know, Jason, I know you feel the same way, but that's probably one of the things that someday I would really like to strap a camcorder to the podium of one of my talks because I love watching, like, I don't know, we need to do this, but like,
we have the best like 80, view.
Yeah, when we're like 80, but like, I love watching the crowd because there's so many states of emotion, right? And when I throw the emoticoaster up there, there's like funny. And then you also have a couple people who are like, she's reading my mind. You know what I mean? Like how does she know? You know, because I tell stories and it's just really great because they come to a place with me, which is the emoticoaster. It's real. We just don't put it up on a slide and talk about it. We don't put it in a book and talk about it. But yet everyone is kind of reliving a moment, or good, bad, ugly. And then I start talking about the cycle of use immediately after that because they roll right into each other, right? Like the world's idea of perfect, all the pressure and insecurity and anxiety that feeds the emoticoaster. Am I enough? Am I going to ever be loved? Like, Am I just bankrupt? Am I damaged goods? Like like this chick walked into my school and now I have like a whole new vision for this, but I don't know if I can even apply that to my life, you know? So, I mean, when I go into cycle of use and I say, you know, think about times that you've been used or used others. I mean, the whole place, like I could be in a high school with 1,000 rowdy kids who are laughing at loving my talk, like laughing. And the minute I drop cycle of use, the whole place, you could hear a pin drop. And it's because everyone is just sitting in a moment called, like, I've never even thought about the fact that I was used or that I used someone else. And when you take them there and you sit with them in that and you love them there, because I actually spend a good like 5 minutes apologizing.
So what is the cycle of use?
Yeah.
Elevator speech. So, what is the cycle of use for those listeners? And then one other guy on the Facebook page, Joel, was asking, I'd love to hear that definition of emotional virtue again, please. So if you can give that in a nutshell, and then the cycle of use, what is that?
Yeah, so I always joke that it's straight up JP2, Fulton Sheen, St. Thomas Aquinas, all my homeboys. But it's to rise above your emotional or physical or sexual desire in the moment and choose the true, the good, and the beautiful for yourself and your beloved. And sometimes that's being able to choose emotionally what's best for you. And you might not even be dating the person. Mm-hmm. And that's, I think, what is the most important thing to realize is so much goes down before even dating or before. I mean, again, there's 50 pages on it in the book about how to go from hey to I do. But that whole idea of like, how am I preparing myself to even enter into a friendship, a relationship? And it's going to come down to, I mean, not to spoiler alert, right? But like you cannot make anyone your God or your idol. I mean, when this is something in my Seek talk, one of my Seek talks for the girls, you know, I went out there, I was like, I got 22 minutes. Like, what, you know, if I really wanted to tell you what I want to tell you, it would boil down to this. If you try to make anyone your God or your idol, like you will crush them under the weight of that. You will destroy them because no one can be that for you. They can't be that for you. And when they fail you, you will be disappointed and you will always end up disappointed in those relationships. And that's what, I mean, again, when I go through this and I talk about the cycle of use, I mean, every time anyone's ever used someone emotionally or physically, you know, it really boils down to, I was making them my God. I was making them my savior. I was making them my everything. I wanted them to take away my pain. I wanted them to give me worth. I wanted, you know, we could go on for days on this topic, but I think that the cycle of use, what I define it as is, you know, you kind of say, like, have you been used emotionally or physically in any way? You know, have you used someone else or have you watched your best friend that's the one that gets people is you watched your brother, your sister, your best friend, someone you love be used emotionally or physically or probably both. And again, just silence in the room because it's one thing to consider it for yourself. It's another thing to go, I watched what that guy did to my sister. Like I watched what that guy did to my mom or what that girl did to my dad. Like, you know, that's like the craziness is that a lot of these students have parents that are dating for the first time again, you know, like they have divorced parents, and I've watched people just weep through that because it's like that pain is real. And so the cycle of use is using people. Again, physical use is a little easier to point out, right? Like he's using you, like she's using you. It's a lot harder to point out emotional use, especially because so many times in our world, you know, it's lines like, you know, well, if you really love me, then, you know, if you'd really love me, then you'd, and that's what, in the part of my talk right after this is that where I throw down and I'm like, look, anybody can have sex with somebody. It's not that difficult. It's actually a lot harder to be able to say, I love you and I respect you. And I just gave up using like 13 minutes ago in Sarah's talk because I will never see this the same. And because of that, the fact that I can rise above my spontaneous emotional or sexual desire in this moment and choose you, what can't I do for you? Like, I just throw down on stage because I'm like, no, seriously, if they can do that for you, what can't they do for you? Because that is, when you're pre-marriage, that's got to be the most sacrificial thing is watching your boyfriend, girlfriend, engaged person, like these couples that are engaged, like, dude, like, that is hard. You're like, I am going to choose you. We are going on a walk. You know what I mean? Like, I always tell my college students that are engaged, I'm like, have a code word. Like, so when you're in a moment where you're like, we need to go on a walk, like have a code word, which is like, yeah, like I want this, but I choose you and we need to go on a walk. Where's the Chinese buffet? Right? So I give that to your viewers because I think that the cycle of use, especially right now, is in a really interesting spot because a lot of people with quarantine weren't hooking up. It wasn't like you were going to parties and, you know, doing all that stuff. Now, so much of this is turned online. So the whole phenomena of like I've had so many messages where they're like, Sarah, what do you think of the whole texture X phenomenon? And I'm like, can you explain it to me really quickly? Like I had to know, I'm just I'm the old homeschool mom, like chilling in Atchison, Kansas, so I'm like, tell me what this is. And so they explained that like during quarantine, so many people were feeling so alone, so like just kind of worthless, and everything was being stripped of them, that it was really tempting. And a lot of people were texting their exes and starting up these like emotional relationships again. And so many of the girls and guys were like asking for advice on that. And I was like, yeah, and again, the devil just knows how to spin lies and webs. And, I look at like all of the junk that they're dealing with. And what I mean by they is anybody out there right now who's single, like you guys have just been thrown like curveball after curveball after curveball. And I feel like the emotional virtue game, you have to be on such high alert right now because everybody is emotionally unstable. I mean, I am, but I mean, like, I don't even know what that's like for a young, questioning your worth, questioning your identity, questioning, like, am I ever going to date someone? I haven't even seen a human being in stinking 6 months. You know what I mean? Like joking, but I just think that I feel for you. I just want your listeners to hear me say, like, when I wrote this book, it was for a time, but I also feel like this time it's like, we got to apply this to this. We got to apply this term of emotional virtue, the cycle of use. This is very real, and we're treading in a place we've never been before. And I just want your listeners to know that, like, I'm fighting for you. I'm here for you. I love you. And I'm proud of you for fighting this fight, because it is not pretty out there right now. And I'm sorry for everybody that's just in deep with this stuff, because it is so easy to get wrapped up in it, especially in these unknown times.
Yeah, no, I think it was Saint Robert Bellarmine who said, "Flee idleness, for no one is exposed to more temptation than he who has nothing to do." And now that we've basically had like 6 months of nothing to do, I mean, it's tough, And so I think what's interesting is that the idea of like worshiping this person or mentally stalking the person, this is happening before they even start dating. So it's like when you get to know the person in person, you feel like you have already seen their last 5 months worth of Instagram posts, and you've formed in your imagination this filtered image of who they are, which is who they wanted to present themselves as. And it takes a while for, I think, reality to kick in, when we've marinated ourselves in this virtual concept of who they are. But it's funny how you mentioned, like, we've got the best view during these chastity talks, so just getting to watch their faces in the assembly. I remember after one of my talks, I went into the classroom afterwards, these like live Q&As with just like a couple religion classes, and they pile in a couple classes into one room, and kids are sitting over on the air conditioner and on the aisles. And the teacher told me coming in, just so you know, there's a couple in this class, and this is what's going on in the relationship, and I don't want to point them out, but just if you could kind of speak to that. And I'm like, oh yeah, sure, whatever. And so I got in, and literally within 2 minutes, I'm like, okay, there she is, second row from the back on the left, and here he is on the front left. You could just see, I mean, and afterwards, the teacher came up and she said, oh, that was perfect. And I'm like, yeah, she was sitting there and he was the second one right there, right? She's like, oh, how did you do that? It's like, look, I'm not a soul reader. I mean, people give away so much. I remember another assembly, there was a girl sitting in the front row, and her boyfriend, I could tell, was sitting on the very top of the bleachers, like 500 people away, and they were texting each other during the assembly. So when I would make a point, she would be like, and then I'd wait like 30 seconds, then I could see him looking at his lap, and and then looking where he then and like nobody. Like, I remember seeing some meme that like teachers are like, look, we're not dumb. No one looks into their lap and smiles just spontaneously. It just doesn't happen. And so but they give away so much. And so, but these key principles that you're laying out there, if we can understand this stuff, like the desires, the urges are good. But one of the things I liked about your book is like, it's not about extinguishing them. There's that you talked about this 80-20 problem and how we've got that backwards. But what I liked about your approach to it, it's not like, no, 100% or zero. It's like, no, it's okay to think about that stuff. It's okay to hope about that stuff, but we just got to put it into perspective. So, sum up what that 80-20 problem is and how to flip it.
Yeah. I just think that, and I will out myself first, like if I could add up all the hours in high school and in early college that I just like wrestled with or obsessed over, gosh, like who am I going to be with? What are they going to do for me? Like, who am I going to date? Who am I going to marry? And then like, how are they going to make me feel? Like, that's what I lay out is, and I put these on the board, I will use these in my talk, and everybody's just like, oh geez, because it's really hard, how much time we cater to the way we look, the way we sound, how we look, on social media. I always love those filters that like, I always remind people how many hours were spent filtering most celebrity Instagram posts, just like, so everybody knows there's a whole team behind that. Right. Yeah. So you just, that kind of thing. My heart goes out because that was me too. And I seriously, I mean this with all of my heart. Like, I don't know how I would have handled social media as a junior high or high school student. I think it would have destroyed me. And what I mean by that is I think it just would have taken whatever insecurities I had and just blown them up so big that 80% would have went to 100. And I don't know how the Lord would have spoken to my heart in college. You know what I mean? I don't know if there would have been any room for him at all. And so for me, like what I tell the students and what I tell, your listeners is, who do I want to be? What am I living for? Who am I living for? To really ask some of those bigger questions in life, like, do I spend my time ever thinking about like, what do I want out of life? Like, who do I follow? What, I think it's really important because a lot of times social media can be so loud and there's so much pressure. And I just speak straight to your viewers right now, is just unbelievable amounts of pressure to like keep up, to make the team, to look the part. And I'm talking to your men and I'm talking to your women. Like, the men don't talk about it as much, but they feel that same pressure to make it, whatever that means, like whatever it means, like to arrive, to achieve, to succeed, to dominate, to conquer, whatever that means to you. And it's all played out on social media. So like the stress, whether it's athletics, academics, social, all these things, like there is so much stress. And Jason, you speak, all over the world too, but like that is probably the number one thing that I get when I love after my talk standing in line for hours, just hugging people and talking to them and answering their questions. But more than anything, just what I see in their eyes after my talk is like hope. And I think what they feel from me is my like unbelievable desire to like hand you a third way, like another plan. Because I think that it's like, you mean I don't have to find my savior in the form of a high school boy or college girl, or, like I don't have to find like I'm trying so hard to make this person my everything and it's exhausting me. And, it's like, yeah, it's actually not the plan, you really think I'm enough, even though I've done this, and that? You really think that I could like have virtue and like have these things that you're like, I desperately want that, but I never thought it was possible. And I just think that what happens is a lot of times we get stuck in that 80%. And it's like, all that matters is, having a Kardashian life or having a, like I have such a heart for the Biebs and Taylor and, all my people, because like that is just such an exhausting game. And then when they get there, it's still not enough. And I point that out. Sometimes it's like, look at the people who have it all. Selena, like, I love all these like people because like you can see it on their face. They get there and they go, is this it? Like, is this all there is? Like, okay, well now what? And I really speak to their heart right now. Like everybody that's out there, like, look, like that is one game to play, but there's another game to play, which is who is the King and Lord of my life? And what do I want my life to look like? And who do I want to surround myself with? Who do I want to run? I always talk about don't run at each other, run with each other, like towards the Lord, like towards heaven horizon, right? Like, where are you going? And, I don't like to drop like real big bombs on people, but, it's like no one's guaranteed tomorrow. And I think a lot of high schoolers and a lot of college students, a lot of young adults live that I'm invisible. I'm invincible. I got a whole life, I call it the altar switch in my book. It's like, I'm just going to show up on my wedding day and flip a switch and I'm going to instantly become this person that I've always wanted to be. And I just look at these men and women and I'm like, look, that there's no altar switch back there. Like, you are, everything that you're choosing right now, everything you're doing right now, everything you're filling your head with is forming you. Like, sit with that for a minute, because that 80-20, like filling your head with the 80%, that in the end doesn't really matter. I mean, like, it's, it matters, but really asking those hard questions about like, dang, what am I living for? Like, what makes me tick? And like, who do I surround myself with? And most of the time, a lot of people come back to me and be like, my friends are toxic. My friends hurt me. My friends have belittled me. My friends have used me. Like, the people I call friends hurt me. And I didn't realize it until now. And that's, to be able to just love on anybody out there right now who's just feeling really alone, feeling really abandoned maybe by their friends, feeling very inadequate. The devil's been really messing with me with that word. Like, Sarah, you're inadequate. You hustle, you do all these things, you're trying all these things, but you're just inadequate. And, it's not that the devil, it's not that these insecurities and these, anxieties and these worries go away. Right, Jason? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, fighting this battle in high school and college, you're going to fight it the rest of your life. And I think that what we find in emotional virtue and chastity, the chastity project, like all these things is, man, these temptations, these limitations, these anxieties, these pressures, they don't go away. You get married and all of a sudden it's like, who has the cutest house and Christmas card, and how clean is your house, and are your children clean, and do they match? And I mean, like, it's just like, it's exhausting. And so if you don't get this right in high school, college, young adult, like, I mean, I think people hear my, I will pour out, like, I am fighting for you, because the sooner you get this figured out, just the more peace and joy and freedom that you have. Like, chastity is just like the greatest gift of freedom, because all of a sudden it's like, whoa, everything that I thought I had to be, I don't have to be anymore. Like, we always joke, you and I are on the same page with bikinis, but like the whole bikini thing, all the girls, like, when I talk about it, I'm like, dude, you don't have to wear a bikini. Wear a one piece. They're cute. Tennis skirt. I love it. That's what I wear. Like, it's great. And they're all like, but like, I have to tan my midriff, and like, I have to work my abs. I'm like, are you planning on sleeping with anyone like in the next like couple of weeks? And they're like, no. And I'm like, are you planning on like modeling, or are you worried about your mom seeing you in your sports bra? And they're like, no. Then like, who are we working these abs for then, my friend? Like, and they all look at me like, you're right. I don't need to do 1,000 crunches a day. And I don't have to tan my midriff. And I'm like, freedom. Like, there's freedom in modesty and chastity and virtue, because all of a sudden your focus is on the right things. And all of a sudden you're just all this joy, and the people that run with you are like cheering you on and supporting you. And so again, like, I want this for people. And I just like crave being able to be out there again, like loving on these, like, again, Suba Mills, 51,000 students that get to hear the message of you're enough, you're loved. God loves you just the way you are, but too much to leave you there. We are going to crank you full of Jesus and virtue and holiness and confidence in the Lord. And then you're going to go out there and you're going to rock it. And that's what I want for your listeners, is just that freedom and peace and joy that the world cannot give.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's the right approach to take with the whole tough topic of modesty. I remember in Emotional Virtue, one of the things you did, you actually surveyed some guys on modesty and asked their feedback on outfits. And I just want to read some of these for the listeners' pleasure. So this is just Sarah getting some honest, raw feedback from guys on outfits. So listen to this. So one guy said, girls have no idea how fast our minds can go from, oh, I think it's going to rain today, to gorgeous girl, straight ahead, tight pants, oh my gosh. So that was guy number one. Guy number two says, when a girl sits in front of me in class, church, wherever, and in a strapless dress or shirt, it's impossible to focus on anything else. At a wedding, you often only see a set of 5 bare backs sitting in the front pew. Next guy says, when women wear see-through shirts, it's hard not to look for their bra. Even spaghetti straps or thin straps send my mind to bras. Neon or black bras under white shirts. Gosh, bras. That guy's thing was bras. Next guy says, he says,
I remember that guy saying that. I was like, gosh, bras.
Okay, bras it is. Next guy says, leggings aren't pants. They're just legs in a different color. They're just bare legs in a different color. With yoga pants and spandex, it's so hard not to let your eyes go where they shouldn't. And if there's writing on the butt, we try to read it. And I often tell the girls, look, your butt is not a billboard. The next guy says, some shirts and dresses are so low cut, silky, and lacy, it makes me think of women in lingerie. And then lastly, most bikinis have less fabric than bras and underwear. If I wonder what she looked like under her clothes, I don't have to use my imagination. That's pretty much it. And so you say these things not to, because some people might like, oh, you're slut shaming and you're promoting rape culture and you're not body positive and sex positive. But one of the ways I like that you kind of masterfully worked around that is you gave this anecdote of this guy that came up to you in the dorm. He's like, oh, so there's this girl I like, and she's not real modest. What should I do? And then you gave her some input, and then you contrast that to a girl who came to you to a very similar problem, but from a guy. Can you just share that anecdote with them of just how we need to be mutually responsible for each other?
Yeah. Whenever I wrote the book, I knew that I would not write a modesty chapter, because I joke that I would rather, two M words in chastity, masturbation and modesty, I would rather talk about masturbation than modesty, because of the hate that we get, and because no matter what happens, people take it the wrong way. So I told my husband, I was like, I'm not writing it about modesty. And he's like, okay. And then like I was writing the book, and then all of a sudden he came up to me and he's like, how would you feel if I told you I think you're a coward for not writing about modesty in there? And I was like, a coward? And he's like, Sarah, if you don't write about it, they're just going to keep asking you. You have to just like talk about it. And I was like, no, because the minute you start talking about modesty, all girls just like go like this, and they're just like, no, shut your mouth, right? Because we are so emotionally connected to our clothes. So like in my women's talk, if I ever am asked to talk about modesty, I talk about the book, and the title of that chapter is called Don't Shoot the Messenger. So I basically talked about, like we, like women, we don't, a lot of people say like dress to protect the men, and it's like, yes, but also like you are a feminine, beautiful woman. You dress for yourself. You dress for the confidence and the class and the beauty that you exude. One, and two, help a brother out. Like, I mean, I've had so many guys that are like, I like really like this girl, but like I have to focus on her from the neck up, so I don't use her from the neck down. And I have these beautiful men. Again, a lot of people think I just do female ministry. Half my emails, half my conversations, a lot of my ministry is actually from the men, because they find in me a safe place to go with these questions. And the fact that like they're struggling with the emotional virtue piece, and they're like, whoa, she gets it. I got to tell her I got to ask her all my questions. And that story in the book goes like this. Like I had this guy who came up to me, and the girl, I'll tell you the girl first. Like I get this a lot, but girls, like, she really liked this guy, and they were like texting, talking for like 6 months, and she finally came to me and she's like, what do I do? Like, do I ask him out? Do I approach him? Do I tell him I like him? Like, he's not picking up any hint that I'm dropping, like some ways, like drop all the hints, right? And this girl came to me, and so she went up to this guy. I was like, hey, it's been 6 months. Like, I really like you. Like we text a lot, like it seems like there's a lot going on emotionally, but like, what are we? And this guy looks at her and goes, oh, we're just friends. If you can't control yourself, like that's your own problem. Like if you can't control your emotions, like that's your own problem. And I remember she came back to report this to me, and I was like, he said what? Like I was like, I couldn't believe it. Like it's one thing to just be like, I see you as a friend. It's another thing to like add that. And I was like, whoa. So again, I sat with that in prayer, and like I was sharing it with some other girls, and she was sharing it with other girls, and I was watching their reaction, which was like intense. So not 2 weeks later, it was like a couple of weeks later, I had this guy come up to me, again, college guys here at Benedictine. And this guy came up to me. He's like, I need your advice. And I was like, okay. He goes, there's this girl that I really like. She's amazing, like holy smart, funny. I really like her. I'm like, good. And he's like, but she wears like such low cut shirts and like such tight pants. And like, Sarah, like I really struggle because I like don't want to use her. Like, I don't want to use her, and I don't want to lust after her. But like, I find that I have to like focus on her from the neck up, so I don't use her from the neck down. Like that's his whole mentality was like, I can't get to know her very well because like I'm just distracted. And I told him and so he looked at me, he's like, can you talk to her for me? And I was like, yeah, like, I mean, I could, but like, I think it would mean a lot more coming from you. And he looked at me, he was like, no. And I was like, yeah, I was like, I think it would mean a lot coming from you. He's like, no. I mean, he was just like, cut my right arm off, like, I don't want to do this. And I was like, so I told him, I was like, look, let's get a piece of paper out. Like, we're going to walk this through. We're going to talk this through. We're going to build a plan. So like, it was so cute. He busted out his notebook. He like took notes, like how he was going to say it, wrote it all out, practiced it with me, practiced it on me. And I was like, you got it, go, like, come back, tell me how it is. So like, I didn't hear from him for a while. So I was like, well, maybe the right time didn't come up. So like a week goes by. And he comes to me, and he has the piece of paper all folded up, and he had this look of just total like rejection on his face. And I said, how'd it go? And he handed me the piece of paper, and kid you not, he handed me the piece of paper and said, I told her everything. I told her how beautiful she was, and like how I care about her, and how I don't want anybody to use her. And he went through the whole litany, and he goes, and she looked at me and said, if you can't control yourself, that's your own problem. And I mean, like, I just looked in his eyes, and like what I saw in his eyes was like utter defeat. And it was just like, he like longed to get to know this girl, and he longed to care for her and to like respect her. And she just couldn't hear it. And that's what, again, like I come to every woman out there. I come to like all the guys out there. I come to you in the name of peace and love and all things, because we are emotionally connected to our clothes. Like I will tell girls, like, you go through your wardrobe, and if you've ever been hit on or complimented in an outfit, you're like, oh, I'm wearing that every Friday night. You know,
That one
like
staying.
you're
Yeah.
emotionally connected to your clothes. And guys too, I've heard this, from guys too. It's like, there's something that, so for me in my conversion, my wardrobe was the very last thing to go. Like, I mean, I was like daily mass in it, like all this stuff, but it was almost like my fear of almost like losing a part of myself. Do you know what I mean? It's like, gosh, but like, what is that going to do to like my confidence or who I think I am? Or like, what happens if this whole God thing doesn't work out and everyone thinks I'm a prude and like a pilgrim or something, you know what I mean? Like all this like worry about what's going to happen if I just let go of this like last thing. And so for me, one of the last things to go in my conversion was what I call in the book, it's called the Closet Challenge. It's my girlfriends and I came up with it in college, and we had a party. We were in a dorm, so it was a lot easier, but we went through all of our wardrobes, and we tried everything on in front of each other. Like we did a bunch of fashion show, like come out in your fashion show, and your friends got to decide whether it was modest or not you. And it was, we burnt like half of the wardrobe that was there. I mean, it was, and then we swapped, like some of us swapped, like this fits you, looks good on you, body type. Like, we took a lot of stuff to the thrift store, but like, I will just say this. It is so freeing to go to your wardrobe, to go to your closet and say to yourself, everything in this closet, like everything in there I can wear and have full confidence that I, Sarah Swafford, am respecting my husband, who I love. My joke is always save your sex appeal for your husband. He'll appreciate it. Like that's my joke, is like a lot of girls are like, but no one will ever think I'm sexy or like desirable again. I'm like, who are you trying to bait here? You know what I mean? Like, who are you trying to attract? And it's like, if it's something that you're trying to be like deemed sexy or something, it's like what kind of bait are you throwing? What kind of fish are you going to catch? Amen. And I think the other thing I want to throw out there is like this girl and I never knew who it was, the girl that told the guy like, hey, if you can't control yourself, that's your own problem. Like, I think about all the girls out there who are like, could a holy guy that doesn't want to use me please hit on me? Like, like how many girls out there that just knew that maybe there's some really good guys that really want to approach them, but they maybe are feeling intimidated or something, or maybe they're feeling like, gosh, like, just because maybe we wear something that to us is fine, but like really trying to think about like how we dress. Again, not just for the men, like we are beautiful women, we should respect and dress the way that we want to be perceived as classy and confident and holy and striving, but also just to understand, like to jump into the mind of a guy and be able to like, when you're dressed modestly, like you're so approachable, you're so, guys like feel comfortable getting to know you. And so I hate talking about modesty. I'm so glad you forced me to do it, because I think it helps people a lot, even though I think a lot of people always want to like kill me afterwards, but just hear me out. It's all from a place of love, and it's all from a place of just knowing, like for myself, that I could stand on my own 2 feet as a woman of God, and it didn't have to do with what people thought of my outfit or what people thought of how I looked. That was a day of like radical confidence for me, where I was just like, okay with not needing that, like that affirmation from men that I had. That was a place in my conversion where I feel like Jesus and I took it to like the next level. Does that make sense? I don't know if that makes sense.
Now,
but
to get super specific, we got a question that came in from Pauline here on the live feed. She's asking, Sarah, would tights be acceptable once the top is long enough to cover the bum? What would you say?
I love all this is so complicated. Okay, so here's my thing on this. It's not so much when you're standing, it's when you're sitting. I mean, this is something I've talked to like a lot of guys about, because like when you stand up and you have like a shirt that covers your bum or whatever, what happens when you sit down? Like, does it go up so high that all of a sudden you're just in like, it just looks like you have on leggings again? I have a couple hard and fast rules. For me, I don't have anything in my wardrobe that has spandex in it, because it just is easier for me to like not have to play the game of like what is, what isn't. It's just easier. But tights, again, like if you're talking like tights because it's winter and they're wool and it's under your dress, like, we're talking those tights, but like I feel every woman out there, like, yes, leggings are comfortable. Yes, yoga pants are comfortable. Yes, those are all things that, like, of course we all want to wear them. I go to great lengths trying to find comfortable pants that don't have spandex in them. It is hard. Like, it is really hard. But that fight is worth it because, again, like, I'm a mom of 5, and like, I want to, I want to just be able to be free, but I'm not like distracting anyone. I'm not hurting anyone. I'm not doing anything that is going to cause them. And for a lot of guys, it's really hard for them with the whole chastity, modesty, pornography, that whole temptation thing. And that's the other thing is I do this full time. So part of my ministry is listening to guys, to men weep in front of me because they are struggling so much with this stuff. So like, my compassion, like, can I go find a pair of pants that are a little more loose for them? Hell yes. Like, that's how I feel about it. It's like, I see in my mind thousands of guys who are trying to kick habits and trying to love women and trying to like dispel every lie that they've ever had about women. And I watch them fight, and I'm like, I can find a different dress for this wedding for them. That's just easy. Like, I can do that. So I think that I just call all my women out there, just like, again, it's selfless, it's sacrificial, it's hard. I wish we could start a clothing line that's just like, easy to go to and click and buy. But part of the challenge is saying, I'm going to fight for the men. And part of that is I'm going to shop in a way that is freeing for me because I can go to my closet and I don't have to question anything.
Yeah, and I think with the question of, layering is often a good option when it comes to modesty. But in terms of how low the layer should go, I would say, well, think about it as a skirt. How short of a skirt would you wear? Like, would you wear a skirt as long as it barely covered your bum by a quarter of an inch? Now we're in the clear. Odds are, well, no, if it were a skirt on its own, then I wouldn't want it to be that short. Well, what's the difference, really, if it's just coming from the top down versus starting from the waist down? And, and these are challenging. And, Pauline's, got a question too. Well, what about exercise? Can I wear it for exercise? And I would imagine the answer would be pretty much the same, that it doesn't matter if a guy's in the gym or a guy's in the classroom, opt for modesty. And it's a bummer because you go into like a woman's workout store and it's like 99.999% yoga pants. Like, you cannot exercise in anything but yoga pants. But maybe, hey, wear the tights, but then just put on some soccer shorts on them or something like that. I don't know. What would you recommend for someone who just practically wants to have something that's breathable, comfortable, that they can sweat in for exercise, but at the same time, modest?
It's like the worst, right? Like, I feel for everyone right now out there that's young and, like you said, working out, doing all these things, because it's like fighting like an impossible game, like trying to find this stuff. Like, it's really hard. It's like mining for gold. But one of the things that my husband and these are questions that I like went round and round with all the college students with when I was writing the book, because I tried out all of my book I had a lot of people read it and I had a lot of people go through it. And one of the guys, it was my husband and this other guy, I was asking them about all this stuff. And again, my husband was a college football player, and he always said, he's like, in the gym, I always worked out with my shirt off. There's mirrors everywhere. And like, if girls would walk in, it was like, bonus. Like, the guys are already like watching me work out. It's like, oh, the girls are here to watch me work out. You're so aware of like who else is working out with you. And so, like Andy, my husband, was just like, if you're working out, like, turn around and you have 3 people staring at you. Like, they're not looking into your eyes, thinking about what a beautiful, color blue they are. Like, you really are at a place where, again, gyms are kind of prone to that. Like, it's just kind of like everyone's looking at each other. Everyone's checking each other out, like it's kind of that. And so I really, again, I want to reiterate, like, this all comes from a place of love. And like, this is hard stuff. It took me a long time to really go through my wardrobe and say, dang, this is so stinking hard. So, for me, I work out in like, cute little like gym shorts, but my whole thing is like fingertips. Like, I have to be standing and my fingertips have to touch it's like very old school Catholic school skirt thing, like having them touch the end, like, and then also, can you sit and kneel in Indian style and do all the things that you need to be able to do and still feel really comfortable with it. So it is the worst. I hate talking about modesty. I wish it wasn't a thing. It's just so hard because it isn't easy, and everyone feels like no matter what you say, you throw everybody under the bus that's ever if you've ever worn leggings or if you've ever worn tights, like, it's you're not in trouble. You're not all these things. It's just one of those things that I think we have to be like a little bit sensitive to, especially to this day and age that we're in, where it's just kind of everywhere. And the other thing I'll say is, if you've ever heard a couple guys talk about a woman inappropriately wearing yoga pants or tights, and said things about her that are demeaning, everybody that comes after me with modesty, it's like, that's demeaning. Not me saying that we should wear a little more clothes to help our brothers out because they're fighting a battle we will never understand. Like pornography, like lust, the eyes, everything. I mean, those are battles that we'll never understand as women to a level that, I mean, men are, you know, turned on by what they see. Women are turned on by what they hear. Men are turned on by what they hear. Women are turned on by what they see. Like you mentioned it earlier, it's a both and, all of the above. Check A, B, C, and D. It's all of it. But in my book, I joke that like if a girl's driving down the street and a guy has his shirt off and he's running, it's like, it's not hot. Put your shirt back on. If a girl's running topless down the other side and the guy drives by, it's a car accident. He's going to get into a car accident, right? Like there's something to be said about the way we perceive each other. And if a guy is just like a helpless, hopeless flirt and like says all the right things and texts her, hey baby, how's your day? And all this stuff, to think that that's not going to do something to us as women is a lie. Like that's a lie. So to wear, you know, leggings with a crop shirt tied in a knot and just be like, why is everyone freaking out about it? Like, what are these guys' problem? You know, it's like, I just think it's kind of like, what? Like, that's hard. Like, that's hard on them. You're beautiful. And I'm happy that you're beautiful. And your husband is going to love that. He is going to love that. And so save it for him. Let that be your greatest gift to him. Let all that energy of like, I don't know, like, I want to just be able to flaunt it. Like, be the bait that you want to, you know, attract the kind of fish you want to attract. And for me, it's that guy who's like, I want to love her well. I don't want to use her. I want to protect her dignity. I don't want, like, when I was in college, I loved to dance, like, loved to dance. And I went to wedding dances a lot, like Sarah Swafford, good dancer. So my sophomore year of college, I transferred to Benedictine, and it's homecoming dance. And I'm just bringing out all my moves, you know, I'm just like out there on the dance floor. And two of my great guy friends pulled me aside, like at the dance, and they were like, we love you. You're beautiful. I just want you to know that when you dance, sometimes guys think about like what you would be like in bed. You are like, we know that that's not your intention. We know that that's not what you're thinking, but like, that's sometimes what people think. I was like 17 levels of mortified. Like, I seriously, like, I went to the bathroom and like hid. I was like so embarrassed. And I just sat there and I was like, I never really thought like that. Do you know what I mean? Like, I never put that all together. And so I'm sure you're thinking like, oh my gosh, like I would be so mad at these guys, like, you know, and I sat there for a minute. I was like so embarrassed. And then I finally like emerged from the bathroom and I found these two guy friends of mine. And I just looked at them and I said, thank you. Like no one else could have said that to me, but you two. And like, it means the world to me that you want to protect me in that way and that you care enough about me to say that. And so I always say people think that like I was probably mad at these guys, but like I ended up marrying one of them. So not mad. It actually was just like a great gift to me. And I share that story because again, sometimes we just don't know. There's no intention. There's no like maliciousness with it. It's just, we don't understand how the opposite sex works. And so for all the guys out there, be really careful with women's emotions. I remember, you know, both sides, all the above.
I remember hearing one comedian say that if women knew what men were thinking, they'd never stop slapping us. Now, I don't think it's that bad. I think with some guys, it's that bad. You can't generalize an entire gender, but that's why ministry or modesty is a ministry of beauty. You know, modesty is the guardian of love. Modesty is empowering. And so, you know, Pauline sent a message. She said, thanks, Sarah. I understand. I will miss my tights. You know, there's a sense of loss that you might feel, but understand that modesty is empowering. It's authentically empowering to women. You know, whereas immodesty promises, you know, this is empowerment. You can pick whatever outfit you want, but to have the power to build up a civilization of love through sacrifice and a sense of responsibility for one another. And I can understand girls be like, what the heck? Like, why should I have to trash my Lululemon pants that I love so much just because some little perverted guy who looks at porn on his cell phone all day can't control his imagination? But it's just like, hey, a sense of responsibility for one another, not just physically, but emotionally, which brings us to a question that I probably get more than any from the college females, which is this whole gray area, this gray zone. What the heck do I do? I'm with this guy. He's sending me all these signals, but he's not moving forward. I'm not sure what he's thinking. You know, what the heck am I supposed to do? Like, I wish he would just ask me out and just make it clear and define the relationship, but he's not. And so let's say you've got that girl. She's just sitting there, you know, it's gray. It's somewhere between friendship, not quite boyfriend, girlfriend. She's wondering why he's dragging his steps, but she doesn't want to be the girl that has to ask him to ask her. What do you say to that girl? Because sometimes they can get stuck in this for a year. waiting for him to make up his mind, only for him later on not to. And there's like, great, there goes an entire year of my life.
Totally. Well, it's a very easy answer. I have her purchase and hand him this book, which is called The Dating Blueprint by Jason Evert. This, like, seriously, I was reading this and I laughed so hard because I was like, he is answering every question that I get from men and women all the time. Like, it's really funny how much these two go together, because in my book, I did the hey to I do, like, how do you go from hey to I do? And it's funny because I couldn't get to everything. So I always say there should be 3 extra chapters in my book. One on breakups, one on what to happen when the guy you like goes to the seminary. And the last one would be on what do I do when I have, like, dropped every hint in the book and it's so gray and I don't know where, I mean, guy and girl, and at Benedictine, I'm really blessed to be privy to watching the dating scene live. Because I live across the street from 2,000 college students and they're phenomenal, like absolutely phenomenal. Benedictine, come hang out. But there's a lot of, like, awkward dating, like I spoke at Franciscan and I did like the top 10 awkward Catholic college dating thing, what I mean? And people were like rolling. And I told them, I said, look, it's the reason why it's so hard for you all is because you actually care about this. And that's good. Like, it's good that you care about this, but sometimes they care about it so much that there's so much drama and there's so much tension and there's so much anxiety. Like, I have sophomore boys that are like, I'm just not ready for marriage. I just can't do coffee because I'm not ready to marry anyone. I'm like, okay, calm down.
Dude, you're 20.
It's going to be okay. Yeah. But they have a great point, right? Because a lot of times what happens in these circles, and I'm speaking to all the young adult circles, like the young adult, like City on a Hill, the young Catholic professionals, like I love all of those groups. I love young adults in big cities getting together. I love it all. But it's hard, right? Because a lot of them are such good friends that all of a sudden it's like, oh, shoot, like I kind of like him, or, she kind of like, he kind of likes her or whatever. And it's like, I don't want to ruin this friendship. What if I ask her and she's like, you're ugly? Or what if I ask her out and she's like, never? And then now it's like every time I see her, I'm like, I'm ugly, or like, I'm kidding. But you know what I mean? Like, there's like all this like, unspoken stuff, and then like the other half of the friend group is like, would you just date already? Like but nobody says any of these things out loud. And at Benedictine I just found out this thing where these students go on freights, and I'm like, what's a freight? And they're like, it's a friend date. We go on freights all the time. I'm like, a friend date? And like this one girl was like, yeah, we've been going on freights for like a year and a half. It's awesome. And I'm like, okay, hold on. You go on a date as friends for a year and a half, guy, girl, and like you've never thought about actually dating each other. And they're like, no, we would never date each other. Like it would ruin our friendship. And I'm like, okay. So like, what would a good marriage look like? You know what I mean? Like, it's like, so again, you have like the whole spectrum with this dating, because it's like, it's hard. I mean, we're human. We're scared of rejection. We're scared of commitment. And that
reminds me of like, it sounds like they're getting on a train, only the track goes in a circle. So that you're not going to Cleveland, you're just going in a big circle, then you get back off.
I'm not throwing anybody under the bus, but like these students that do freights, it's kind of like, okay, on the one hand, cool that you're actually like, going out and like getting to know someone and stuff. But I think my question to them is always like, so why have you not thought about marrying this person? Like, this is the makings of like a great marriage. The fact that you guys can go out and have a great time, and like friendship is like the foundation stone of these great relationships. And so the gray area, we're just talking, we're just texting, we're just hanging out, all the way to freighting over here. You know what I mean? Like, there's so many levels of it, right? But like, I think what's so hard for a lot of people is we're just talking, we're just texting, we're just hanging out. You can get stuck in that for like a year. And it's really easy for, I think, people to, one person may think there's something more than the other. It's like, oh no, we're just friends, but we text all day and we talk every night and, all these things. It's like, well, what is your definition then of dating? Because I think that's where it gets kind of muddy. And that's why in the book, the natural progression of a relationship, I went very slowly through each one, acquaintances. Hey, how's it going? I kind of know you. I'm familiar with you, right? To like true friends, which I could talk about for another hour and a half, to like dating, which is, well, I call it, DTR, like defining the relationship, stating your intentions, then dating, then courting, then engagement, then marriage. And the reason why I split up DTR, dating, and courting for a reason, because a lot of people think that, a lot of people think that like when you start dating, it's like get a ring. You know, like they skip from dating to engagement, and that puts a lot of pressure on dating. And then a lot of people think that dating is like there's no DTR, right? So like define the relationship, state your intentions, you know, and I joke in the book that there's two. There's one that's like, hey, I'd love to get to know you without our other 40 friends around. Would you like to go to coffee? Versus, sorry, my phone is like keeps going off. Versus the idea of like going into a relationship where you're like, we've been kind of talking and texting and hanging out, and we've been kind of getting to know each other, but like, are we ready to make this second step and define this relationship and say we're dating? You know, luckily there's not like Facebook official anymore. People typically don't like, you know, oh, we're dating because we're on Facebook now because
so
they don't.
What does the girl do if the guy won't do the DTR1 or the DTR2? What's the girl supposed to do?
So in my book, I have this line, and I asked my husband, I was like, what do you think? Like, what if she's dropped every hint in the book? What if she's like gone at it at every angle and she's like expressed it, everything, but like, will you date me? What does she do? And my husband looked at me and he was like, I know it sounds harsh, but like, then he's just not interested. And it really hurts because I think as a woman, it's like you take that so personally, right? And that's why chapter, 16 on breakups is sometimes rejection is the greatest gift because it gives you clarity. Like there is, again, like when I hold guys crying because they, like I get a lot of guys that 2-year relationship ending and they're like, my life is over. Like it is over. Like I had a ring or my whole life was built around this, and I'm hugging and these guys are just weeping. And I'm like, look at me. You deserve to marry someone who loves you as much as you love them. You should never drag anyone along the road of life to love you. You should never have to convince someone to be more in this with you. There should never be any of that. This is a mutual pouring in of love and life. And you should never have to do that. And praise God that you found out now, not 6 months from now or a year from now or 10 years into marriage, that this isn't the one. Because you deserve to be with someone, and you want to be with someone that loves you as much as you love them. And they look at me like, oh, that's a way better way of thinking about this than I just got dumped. And I'm like, yes, like you didn't get dumped. You were given the gift of clarity. Like you were given the gift of a sincere woman who told you that she loves you enough to tell you that this isn't a thing, that this isn't forever. This isn't for her. That's a gift. Because a lot of women, a lot of men string each other along for years and then come out with it. And it's like, I could have been happily dating someone else like 6 months after our breakup, but instead I'm in this relationship. And so it all kind of circles back to that. You can't make anyone your savior. You can't make anyone your everything. You have to run, not at each other, but with each other towards the Lord, eyes on the prize, eyes on heaven, helping each other get there, loving each other well, freedom, chastity, whole 9 yards. Because if you don't have it, then all of a sudden you start running at each other, you make each other your everything, and you run that risk of using one another.
Yeah. And so wrapping things up so that we don't end on a note of breaking up and heartbreak, with that gift of clarity, an opportunity is afforded to live with a new purpose. And you had mentioned in the book to become the woman of the dreams, and you'll attract the man of your dreams, and likewise for the guy. So speak to that, just how the singles can realize, hey, the relationship is not my identity. My God is not my future. My God is not a sacrament. My God is God. And my hope is going to be in him. My hope is not going to be in any earthly thing, even the holiest of sacraments, other than the Blessed Sacrament itself. And so speak to that, of how they can take these years of singleness and work on all those virtues that they hope to find in a spouse so they can develop them in themselves.
Yeah, amen. I have a little mantra that I make people repeat after me, but it's, I will not settle. I will not settle. I will not settle. And nothing good happens out of desperation. And I speak to so many guys and so many girls that are like, this has to be the one, or I will never find anyone again. I have to get married before I'm 29 or my life is over. I have to have a ring before spring or I will not graduate. There's so much like panic. And if you are desperate, and you feel that desperation, that is like the devil's playground. And you're going to make decisions that you're going to regret. And you're going to let big things, things that should be important, you're going to write them off and be like, it's not that big of a deal. This isn't that big of a deal. You know what? Like settling doesn't just, come in the fact that, it's a million different forms. Amen. So I bring my whole heart to this, all your audience, all of your listeners, everything that we just talked about, and everything that Jason and I and Kristalina and Matt and Chris and everything we talk about. The first thing that you have to know is that we know that none of this is easy. Like, nothing that we talk about is easy. But everything that we talk about, everything that I have pleaded with you in this last hour is worth it. Yeah. It's not easy, but it's worth it. And my life, I mean, I look back on my life and it's like, man, that was hard. Man, that was hard. Man, that was hard. Man, I mean, name it, right? Everything we talked about, everything in the book. I mean, and what I say is like, I want, again, like when I was dating Swaff, when we were talking about how we wanted our relationship to look, and we both was our first relationship post-conversion. And we just had a lot of conversations about like what we wanted out of this relationship. And I remember at one point we like looked at each other and we were like, this is radical. And I actually wrote about that in the book. It was like, I know that everything I just said is radical. It's radical to the world. Like Sarah Swafford, super lame because she doesn't wear leggings. Sarah Swafford, super lame because she doesn't, she doesn't do X, Y, and Z, and she like calls for freedom and calls for chastity, and she wants guys and girls to like talk to each other, and it's like she's such a prude. Like, I know that I am asking for it's a radical ask, but like, you have no idea how much we want this for you. Like, I mean, everyone always thinks about, what am I going to lose if I go all in with the Lord? Like, what am I going to lose if I like take on this image of like a godly woman? If I want to be a daughter of God and I want to live this, if I want to be a son of God and take on that identity, like, I'm going to lose everything. And I think my question back to that is like, no, my friends, like, have you considered what you're going to gain? And have you considered what those friendships that are hard, when you have to leave a friend group and say, I love you, but like, I can't go there with you anymore. I can't be in that. I can't be there with you anymore. I have to go. I have to bounce. Like, when you say that and you go and find another group of friends, that is radical. That is hard. That doesn't make sense to the world. And so when I say like, I want you, if you're called to marriage, like, this is going to be radical. People are going to make fun of you. People are going to question you. People are going to be like, that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. So all the hate that I get, all the hate that Jason, that you get, all the people that come after us, and the people after talks that, like firmly disagree with what we're talking about, it's like, dude, I know it's a lot. It's a big ask. I know that. But like, I will go to my grave saying, what is your alternative? And I refuse to let you walk through this life broken and heartbroken, and just in a place of, I want to take you in all of your woundedness, and I want to lift you up, and I want you to put you before the Lord, and I want the Lord to heal you. And then you, like, as you're healing, as you're growing, those relationships are going to come alive for you. And that's what I mean when I say, like, work on yourself, like, take yourself before the Lord. Kristalina just did a beautiful thing on like, when is the day you want to go back to confession? Today. Like, today is the day, right? Like, it's today. Today's the day that you want to heal and you want to grow and you want to look to some friends that are going to help you in that and not drag you down, And if you're in a relationship that doesn't bring you to the Lord, just take a big step back and say, like, man, I have to make a radical choice. What is this going to entail? What is this going to look like? And everything that we've said and everything that I do is coming from a place of love. And I've been sweeping up broken pieces of people for 15, 20 years. And I will do it for the rest of my life. But if I can catch you before you hit the ground and shatter, then you better believe I will. And so just know that I love you and that I want that freedom and that peace that the world can't give. And I appreciate everything that you do, Jason. You and Kristalina are huge inspirations to me and mean the world to me. And I thank you for encouraging me to write that crazy book. And I thank you for having me to come and hang out with you. And I wish we were at a Steubenville, but I love anytime I get to hang out with you, Jason. It's like cash money.
No, and we're deeply grateful for you and the courage that it took, to write Emotional Virtue. I think your story is so powerful because it shows how God can use kind of those broken times of our lives to bring something beautiful out of it. You share, I think, in some of your talks how, you were forced to change junior highs to a completely different school because of how much bullying that you were subjected to. God allowed you to go through that crucible of suffering in order to bring something radiant out of it. I mean, Evert, I had junior high struggles. A lot of people don't know this, but I was actually kicked out of my Catholic 8th grade school right before graduation because of some less than appropriate words that I had written in a friend's yearbook. And I remember being in class, there's only a couple days left of school graduation, and, over the PA, oh, well, Jason, please come down to the main office, the principal. I'm like, oh, cool, I get out to go walk out of class. I'm walking out of class and I, walking towards the principal's office and I see my mom's like wood paneled station wagon or minivan sitting out front. I'm like, oh, mom's here. I wonder what she's doing. And I walk in to the office. They're like, yeah, please go to the principal's office. I'm like, what's going on? And I walk in and there's my mom, like eyes swollen with tears, Sister Mary Richards sitting behind the desk, and the yearbook opened up with all of my handwriting in there of what I had written in this guy's yearbook. And it's just like, oh, and it was like, yeah, so boom, got the boot. So kicked out of Catholic school for the last couple of days of 8th grade. Went home. I think my mom made me vacuum for like 72 hours consecutively in punishment and penance and mortification. But I think it was just the love of my mom, the prayers of good old Sister Mary Richard for this kid, that he would use to learn language in the way that God intended for it to be used. I mean, who knows what prayers she was offering up for me, but those times of our life that are dark, uncertain, or just flat out stupid, God can use it all. I mean, he can take a mess and make a miracle out of it. And so thank you for the work that you've been doing. If people want to get a hold of Emotional Virtue, 2 things. One, you can go to chastity.com. There's the hardcover edition, but then there's also a paperback edition. They're only $3 a piece to get them in bulk. And that's what we'd recommend. Get them in bulk because there's study guide questions throughout the book that you can use with the guys in the dorm, with the girls in the young adult community or youth group. Get these things. Study this stuff as a group, as she talks about in the book. Form your posse. Find these people that are going to walk alongside you in this journey. And so you can go to chastity.com for that. You can also just go to emotionalvirtue.com to learn more about Sarah, about her ministry. And for those of you that are watching this on Facebook Live, we'd encourage you also to subscribe to the podcast. The name of the podcast has been Love is Greater Than Lust, but we actually changed that a couple of weeks ago. So the new title of the podcast is Lust is Boring. And so that's going to be the new title of the podcast of just like, hey, this whole thing of the world promises, that's not where it's at. That's not where we're going to find joy and fulfillment. So if you get on Apple, Spotify, Google, just type in Lust is Boring, or my name is Jason Evert. Subscribe to the podcast. And if you can, hit a review or rating, because apparently what that does is help drive it up the search engine rankings within the podcast platform. So more people are going to get exposed to this message of emotional virtue, of chastity. And next week, what we're going to be having on is I did a Q&A session with a group of youth and young adults from the United Arab Emirates, and they submitted more than like 100 questions, and we weren't able to get through all of them. And so I told them, hey, look, I'm going to make a podcast just answering your questions on dating, relationships, sexuality, gender, homosexuality. You just submit it, and we're going to answer it. We've also got questions that have come in through our supporters on Patreon. So if anyone supports us on Patreon, you could submit questions there, and then we're going to answer them on this podcast for anybody to hear. So if you just click the link in the bio or just type in the name Jason Evert on Patreon, you can support us there, and that keeps the podcast moving and growing because we want to reach more people than ever with this message. And so, Sarah, I cannot thank you enough for coming on board. I just ask our listeners to please pray for you, for the fruitfulness of your ministry, for the protection of your family, for all the good work that you and Doc Swaff are doing. So, Sarah, thank you for coming on today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I love you guys. I'm praying for everyone.
Oh, well, thank you for the prayers. God bless you. And we'll see everybody next week.